Bruce will agree.
Should we just get started?
Yep. It's fine.
Okay,
Go with it.
all right. Well, welcome to the September 20th, 2022 LUZO meeting. Tonight's agenda includes some discussion on the subdivision ordinance, update on village planning meetings, and more mostly conversation about the short-term rental initiatives that we've been working on. So hey, there's Stephanie. Hey, Stephanie. All right. So just a quick update on the subdivision ordinances. We're sliding through it. Here it is. What I've been doing is comparing the existing, right now what I'm doing is comparing the existing standards for submission with the proposed ones, just to make sure that they're consistent, and some things we need to go over. What I was actually thinking was, I might want to schedule a meeting with the planning board to go over, like, here's what we're proposing so far.
That's like a work session?
Yeah.
It's the work
Say if
session,
you
like,
wanna do a
they're
work
the ones that really are gonna be administering it. It's, we can talk about standards, but one thing I want to focus on with them is the, here, you know, here's the procedural requirements of a more consistent subdivision ordinance. You know, are we asking for the things that you have thought would be helpful in subdivision applications, if you can recall the minimal ones that you've had, and you know, that kind of thing. So I was thinking about that. So I'll circle back around with you on that, but I think it would be worth the time.
I think it would be a good idea.
Yeah, and then we can come back here and say, okay, we've reviewed this with the planning board. Here's what we're proposing.
Yeah.
Great. So I'm gonna do that.
Great.
Okay. That's it, that. Next thing on the list is planning for village planning meetings. So many of you will recall, we've been talking with Otter Creek residents and Somesville residents multiple times in the past, and trying to organize some village planning meetings. We have those now in the process, and Seal Harbor meeting. We also had some residents from Seal Harbor come talk to me and Kim too about needs. So this is good timing with regard to comprehensive plan update, and really kind of, there's been a lot of thought in Northeast Harbor, but these meetings are really geared toward focusing on other parts of the community. So we've scheduled those for Seal Harbor's Tuesday, October 11th. Otter Creek is the October 13th, and Somesville is going to be November 1st.
Is there any thought or need for going forward with Pretty Marsh and Paul Corey?
I think we may want to do
Northeast
that.
Harbor?
Yeah, I think for sure we'll want to circle back around with those, but let's like start with these.
Yeah,
three,
that's
and
what I
then
wondered, if this was a
Yep.
comprehensive list or just the beginning.
just the beginning, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually talked about that in my office today. Yeah, so the interesting thing is, like, Kim and the town's been sending us addresses so we can send these to people on the list. And like, now the question is, like, how do we actually define who we're gonna mail to in Somesville? So I think we're working with Kyle. We're gonna work with Kyle on that, just to get the list. Otter Creek is really easy because it's well defined. I think Seal Harbor's fairly easy as well, but now we're gonna start to get into.
I think Otter Creek's the only one we ever actually did a field trip.
Yep. We
Yeah,
have,
we had a
we've
meeting
done
there.
one
Remember
meeting.
we had the meeting?
Yeah, we've done one meeting already.
Yeah, that was years ago.
But I think, like, we can take some of that, and so the format of these meetings is gonna be a little different, where we hope to have people there and then maybe do some breakout like tables, so that we're not just having me up there talking and like pointing to people and having the same old thing.
Right.
But let's, like, you know, really try to seek some understanding of like what are the unique aspects of this village that we need to be thinking about? What are some ideas that you have? You know, what doesn't seem to be working, what does seem to be working, those kinds of questions. So I think it'll be very informative for like future land use planning as part of the comprehensive plan. And then we'll be,
I've got one in my
You've got one?
office, yeah.
yeah, so we're gonna be sending like these notices to all the different.
I think they're colorful and happy. I
Yeah.
think they're eye-catching.
Yeah, thanks, Callie, in my office, and Suzanne, take no credit for these works of art.
Oh, yeah, good.
You know what, I think the meetings are gonna be interesting, I think is a good time, people really are, they do seem to be really engaged and wanna talk about their part of the community, and I didn't wanna start in Northeast Harbor. You're right. I think Northeast Harbor gets a lot of attention. in other
Well, I think
places.
this has been on our list for quite some time,
Yep.
specifically Otter Creek.
Yeah,
I'm
Yeah,
glad to
started.
see that, yeah, now we have a date.
yep,
Well, there's been so much happening in Northeast Harbor also.
Yep.
This, Main Street project and everything else, it's
Yeah.
just chewed up all the time.
Yep.
There was always something to address.
Yep.
So,
yeah, so I'd couch this a little bit, you know, pre-comp plan brainstorming. And responding to things that we've started to talk about, I think.
when is the comp plan due for revision? It must be coming up within the
So
next
it's
couple
doing
of
next
years.
year.
Yeah, it's
So
right
we
now,
do.
yeah,
Oh, it is right now.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
so,
Because I knew we were behind the 8 ball in 2007.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're,
I thought,
it's every, what, 10 years, and
Yep.
2009 was the last
Oh,
time we had it done.
you know,
10
We-
years. Okay.
we've started working on the data, so my plan would be. Let's just we're gonna do the data stuff behind the scenes, so the inventory chapters and just do a quick not a quick update, but an update, so it doesn't have to be all. And then focus in on discussions that are. You know, there are certain topics when you're doing an update that maybe like we don't need to deal with natural resources. I just pick on that one, for example, because we have a good map. We're surrounded by Acadia National Park, but we can also identify, you know, we know what's happening in the community right now. Let's start really focusing in on some of those hot button, you know, land use topics like some village planning or housing is a big one. It's gonna be a big one. I'm sure there's a few other things that will pop up, but we can start to be a lot more efficient and not have comp plan meetings where, you know, we're meeting every month and then we're just like talking about the data. To me, I'd rather just kind of skip over it. We do the data analysis, presented in a kind of a draft form. Here's the key findings that come from that. And then actually talk about the things that people are interested in, rather than, okay, the statistic for the number of roads in town has not changed in 10 years. Or that kind of thing. So that's the plan. So it's underway. And I think it's a good time. My sense is people are really engaged right now. And also kind of interested, like, I think another reason not to do Northeast Harbor right off is because I feel like Northeast Harbor I'm really interested in having kind of a facilitated discussion that's put on by the town about Northeast Harbor. Because I feel like there's a weird identity crisis, push and pull going on in Northeast Harbor, and I'm just not sure how to facilitate that conversation yet. But should be interesting. Questions on these? Everybody should feel free to go.
Well,
Each
how-
one, it's gonna be awesome.
To each one.
How are you going to, I came into at the end of that, how are you going to get these into people's hands?
We're mailing them
Are you mailing them,
physically,
right, but are you mailing them first class or are you
Yep.
sending them bulk mail
There's-
with the permit?
first class, I think. Whatever, we've got all the mailing labels, and that was actually a question I was gonna have for Daryl. Do you want me to put a stamp on them, or do you want me to bring them back in an envelope? And, no.
The more you can do, the better, I think, you know. You can have them all ready to go and we can run them.
So I'll bring them to you in an envelope and you just run them through and put it in the mail.
Yeah, that's the most. I think it's
So we've got it all
easiest way to
printed out. I was
Excellent.
thinking first class.
Go for it.
They're stuffing them tomorrow. I believe. Yeah, and I've already gotten phone calls. I know Suzanne's already gotten a few phone calls because the town already sent out a mailing
Mhm.
or email, like a blast email.
Mhm.
So we'll do that. We're gonna make some phone calls to people in different villages that we know were interested in it, so we're gonna do that too.
Is it gonna be in the paper?
Yep,
Yeah, I think we got a fairly good recruitment campaign going on.
yes, pretty comprehensive. Yep, so hopefully more than 5 people show up.
Mhm.
I bet there'll be some interest. I think Otter Creek's gonna be engaged. I think Somersville will be engaged,
I
obviously.
was really pleased that we're gonna have another one probably in November, but we had that first, in the water quality project over there, we got 60 people.
Yeah,
It was pretty remarkable turnout.
yep,
So,
yeah,
those folks are pretty engaged. If there's something of interest in, they do tend to turn out. So,
mhm. Does that freak anybody out with the owl eyes just staring at them?
used to the high tech with them.
All right. Any other questions on this? Spread the word. Be awesome. I think it'll be, I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it should be interesting.
Okay, next thing on the list was, we've been working on the whole short-term rental discussion for a while, and I think, the last meeting or two, we talked about the idea that. We wanted to just create, I think it's easier for you guys when you have something to kind of react to. So I put together a draft of a licensing ordinance. The idea here being, what I've said before is, there's concern that short-term rentals are a problem, but yet we don't really know to the extent that they are a problem. So one of the first ways to kind of do this would be to try to figure out, to quantify what the issue, what the number of short-term rental units are. And then, by also doing so, we could add in a few life safety elements. So the licensing process is a good way to do that. And so that is what this is. And it can be as comprehensive or as minimal as we want it to be. And I think what I tried to do is make this one fairly basic, but also added some questions in here that we need to try to deal with.
I have a couple of questions or concerns or whatever, knowing that I missed a few meetings. This issue actually arose from a select board member concerned about private residences in Northeast Harbor vacating their primary home, going to a campground, and then renting their home on the over the summer.
Yep.
To raise some income for whatever, to pay their taxes or whatever. At a subsequent meeting, when I was here, I said, before we get too far down into the weeds, we need to define clearly the nature of the problem.
Yep.
What is the problem?
Yep.
Otherwise, we're creating a solution to a problem that doesn't exist.
Right.
And then I saw this, which is very comprehensive,
Mhm.
and it not only dumps a whole lot of work onto you on an annual basis, but also every 5 years. And then is contrary to why this group was even formed in the first place, which
Yep.
was to reduce the size of the LUZO.
Sure.
And here we now have created one ordinance, the quarrying ordinance, and now we're looking at creating yet another ordinance.
Yep.
So I think before we rush headlong into this entire process and just, yep, this looks good, that looks good, I think we ought to take a good hard look at first, what is the problem?
Yep.
And then how do we go about fixing it? The LUZO got as big as it is now by presuming that something might become an issue down the road. And it just, since I've been involved since 2007, it's gotten thicker, and more unwieldy. And to the point where on occasion, Kim has needed an assistant to help her manage that document alone.
Mhm.
So I just throw that out for consideration to this group before we, go headlong in making recommendations to the warrant committee or whatever for a vote on the town floor. I want to be absolutely crystal clear on the nature of the problem
Right.
before I even want to participate in discussing a solution to that problem.
Yep. So I just have a couple of thoughts on what you're saying, and all of them are things that I've already are right in line with the way I've started thinking about it. But number one, I think the primary question is, what problem are we trying to solve?
Exactly.
So the deal that my observation with short-term rentals is that it's a very emotional topic and a very responsive topic, particularly as it relates to the affordability matter in the town, which I don't think anybody can argue that there isn't an affordability issue for housing in this town, and we have data every month. Katrina shares data with me.
And
to
some things
show-
don't even make it. I mean, I didn't probably send you the one that was listed on Sunday when under contract Monday, so it will never hit
Right.
the data.
And I also have selfish motives. Everyone knows that we rent cottages, and
Sure.
those cottages have been rented for the last
Yep.
60 years.
Yep. And so what-
They've been
Generation.
upgraded, they've been improved, and and all that, and when I first heard that we might be discussing this, I asked for clarification. Is this to deal with folks that vacate their home and go live in a campground and then rent their house? And the answer was, yeah, that's exactly what they're talking about. I went,
But that's
oh,
not
so
it.
established businesses like our LLC falls under this.
Yep, and we could definitely discuss ways to try to change that, if, in terms of the definition, just like we excluded.
Right, and that's, I just want to put it out there that, you know, my reasons for
Yep.
participating aren't all altruistic. It's partly because I'm very selfish.
Well,
We have rentals, and
yep,
having other impositions such as this placed upon us without a clear understanding of the nature of the problem, to me, is government overreach.
right, so
So-
my response is, that's a very reason why I keep saying this is such an emotional topic, because you're not just talking about people from out of state buying something that's an investment property that they have no emotional attachment to. You're talking about things like what you do, or like, I continue to use my grandmother as an example. When she lived in Bar Harbor, she used to rent her house out in the summertime because she needed that money to pay for tax. There's all kinds of emotional
Sure,
links to this. And then there's also the perceived problem that vacation rentals are causing X, Y, and Z issues. So what are those issues? The path that leads to a licensing ordinance is exactly to help define the problem. You can't, I don't think you're gonna be successful in just asking people to tell you, I'm a vacation, I'm a license, I'm a short-term rental. So we need to figure out a way to quantify what we're dealing with before we can identify whether or not that's a problem.
right.
That's what drives you to this. You have to take the, here's what I perceive to be a problem, and then put a quantification to it
Mhm.
in order to have like a real conversation about it. And that's what this starts. It's not perfect. It's only a draft.
No, and I appreciate bringing the draft because it addresses a whole myriad of issues that would come up in a conversation.
Yep.
And with a draft, we can go through each
Right.
line by line and say, that doesn't fit here.
Exactly.
And where did this language come from?
Where it came from multiple places. So,
Different towns that
Yep.
have,
Yep.
okay,
So we, Bar Harbor, Kennebunkport, Cape Elizabeth, like I pulled
Yeah.
together a lot of different. This is some things that seem to make sense for here based on my experience. And so I think in here, I think I might have even highlighted like your exact question, like. And I always try to say this because I work with Kim a lot, so I'm super sensitive to all the things that are on her plate, but like. You know, is this a code enforcement issue, or is this a registration that somebody else in the town office would have to do? Like, you really do need to think about. You're adding another administrative layer to
Mhm.
the
This
conversation.
is a full-time job.
I don't know if it's a full-time job, but. It's a once a year license process, and the idea would be to try to make it. Fairly simple, but that the form that you're asking people to sign out is informative. To help you quantify and identify what the actual. Impacts might be of that use. That makes sense. That's the way I would think about it.
it also has an impact on certificates of occupancy. Once it's been awarded, according to this draft, you would have to go back and inspect every 5 years. So that puts a deadline date on COs. Do they all expire or just for rentals?
Right,
And you have to go and visit every house every 5 years.
yeah, which you don't.
Those are
again,
just questions that come up.
Yeah.
You know,
which
I
you
have to
don't
have
need
mine
do.
inspected because I rent it? Why is that?
Yep.
They're not gonna tear down the smoke detectors. You know, it's, well, that's true, yeah, you never know.
Yeah, we could. Again, a draft for discussion.
Yeah.
So you could definitely work through this and like really say, let's make this even more simple. But I sometimes like to throw things, I like to have a good draft for discussion.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to rush through this. I think this is what I was asked to do.
Yeah.
So. That's why I pulled it together.
I
But
know.
I don't, and we've had some conversations about it back and forth. And I don't think that, I think that not having something like this to start to work through is less productive than the way we had been talking about it. Because then you're gonna have the other half of the people that
Right,
think that there's a problem, think that we're really not doing anything.
this
about it.
gives you at least something, one of my favorite expressions, a vessel from which you may fish.
Yes.
or drink.
But it doesn't get you.
Really?
It's the, like, this is and to be, I think the overall objective here, through a series of revisions would be to take a light touch. To sort of dip your toe in the water, really trying to understand the problem and setting the town up for if and when it does become a problem, you have a framework in place to try to deal with it. And I think, yeah, I get like half the people that talk to me are like, this, we've got to do something about this, and then the other half are like, what you're saying.
I think Stephanie had a comment.
I just, and maybe Katrina can answer, does she know, like, maybe over the last 5 years, how many houses in Mount Desert have been bought and then just flipped right to seasonal rental? Do you have any? Maybe not.
One this past year that I know of was
Yep.
purchased by an investor that I was involved with. I represented the sellers
Yep.
in Northeast.
Mhm.
And it was purchased by an investor who's
Okay.
doing Airbnb, but he comes and stays periodically.
Yep.
But
I'm
he-
just thinking, yeah, and I think I've said this before, the town of, not necessarily all in Mount Desert, but Northeast Harbor's kind of been renting before houses out before it became cool. Kind of, I mean, there are summer folks and whatnot that have been renting houses for, 50, 60 years. So I, whatever we do decide, just, I don't know if there'll be a grandfathering sort of thing. Is this only things, from 2022 on? I'm just curious what the thought is on that. Like, will it kind of have a timestamp from this date on, or is it going to go retroactive, or who knows, I guess?
I think if you're really trying to capture the data and really understand what that use is and how it is spread out around the town, then it can't be timestamped to, as of 2022.
Mhm.
They have a license. I think you have to say, all we're doing is requiring you to come in and get a license. The fee could be $20. It's really up to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
And as
fill this
far as
form out and-
Change over time, I think I mentioned at the last meeting I was at, that the 25 years ago, the population of year-round residents in Northeast Harbor was 950 people.
Yeah,
And today it's about 300.
right.
So those houses didn't just vanish.
Yeah.
People left, they were bought up by others who aren't year-round residents. And what they do with them, I don't know. I can't equate the absence of year-round residents with an increase in rentals.
Right.
But those houses went to somebody to do something with, and
Yes.
Lord only knows what they were doing with them.
Right.
I mean, you've been here all your life, so maybe but.
Well,
But that's an interesting statistic to look at, and if you extrapolate that out over the next 14 years, there won't be any year-round residents in Northeast Harbor,
correct.
if that trend continues. So you'll have an entire summer colony or rental village
Yep.
Well,
in which lives our seat of government.
under circumstances of the fact that we've been going over from year-round to seasonal for years, I'm not sure that the impact of short-term rentals has really much to do with the affordability issue, because they go one way or the other, they become seasonal.
Right,
Either the person buys it and lives there for June, July, or August or whatever and leaves, or that they rent them, but they're going to be sold, and they're probably going to be sold to somebody with a fairly good checkbook to begin with. So I think the affordability thing, I don't think we correlate or causation.
Right.
no, I'm just suggesting that those properties,
They do.
600.
Yeah.
people have left,
Yeah.
and their houses went somewhere. Somebody bought them,
Something about
the
it.
houses didn't leave.
Right.
So they're vacant, they no longer are occupied by year-round residents.
Yeah.
What they do with them, no idea.
So
I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you banned, let's say if you were really draconian, and you say no one's ever going to be able to rent, I mean, this is
Oh, I
a
don't-
silly example, right?
Yeah,
It would not affect the affordability of housing in Mount Desert, I think, at all.
no, I
Because-
agree with you.
Because they would just switch over, okay, I can't buy this, rent it, but I want to have a nice second home, so it's not, I think trying to tie it into affordability is a really kind of a hopeless task.
Yeah, if I think about housing and these kinds of things almost every day. So
Sure.
when I think about it, like as a pie chart, like you know, the causal effect of affordability, like, you know, short-term rentals might be a really thin slice on the pie chart. And I also think, you know, what makes affordability an issue in the village of Northeast Harbor might not be the same as what makes affordability an issue in other parts of town, but there's a lot more data you'd have to really try to mine down and figure out. I think, you know, to get to the short-term rental thing, like a lot of people talk about it as it's the silver bullet of affordability, and all the bad people are going in and making, you know, investments in short-term rentals and blah, blah, blah. I think it's a smaller percentage in Mount Desert than people think it is.
Well, the issue actually arose out of people that are currently living here, who vacate their home in the summertime and go live in a campground.
And what's
And rent their house. That's my question. Wherein lies the problem in that? If they make enough money to pay their taxes, the taxes are still being paid, they're still year-round residents.
They're living where they want to
So
live.
I'm waiting to hear the clear definition of the problem.
Yes. I think
from what I understand, there's I don't know if it's an urban legend or a myth. I think people are thinking that all of these houses are being sold to these multi-investment companies, these multinationals that are coming in. And would you say you identified one of them up to this
Right.
point? So maybe you missed a few, maybe there's half a dozen, but it certainly isn't 200 or 300. I think.
it is happening in other parts of the state, and it's working its way up. And I don't know if it's like,
Our price point doesn't allow it to happen.
that's
Yeah.
the key in Mount Desert, that you guys, I mean, this town is isolated in that sense that, you know, you really have to.
You can't make money buying a property at the fair market value and using it as a seasonal rental. The numbers don't work.
You'll never realize a return on your investment.
Right. So, I mean,
Well, that's a-
and
that's a
for
good-
generations, families have been going to the campground or going to camp. So I
think I would come at this and say that even this draft does not make a judgment on whether or not it's good or bad. It just says,
Right.
please register your short-term rental and pay as a fee. So at the very least, you could be generating revenue on a service that is, on a business that's operating in your town.
But
It
I
could
don't-
be a very, very minor thing, but I'm not passing judgment on short-term rentals. I can argue both sides of I mean, I think it's there's a bigger picture to it than what some people think. It's not the silver bullet for affordability. I think we can all agree to that. And I also think that there's a lot of other things to consider if you're just talking about affordability. There are other things that short-term rentals come with that also need to be considered, like, are you filling up this residential area with people who aren't used to being in this area? Where are they appropriate? Where are they not appropriate? Are they appropriate everywhere? There's a ton of questions that come along with that. Is this a party house? Is this not a party house? Like, if you're a short-term rental and you got a bunch of, young people that go to have a party house next door to my grandmother's house, that might be a problem. Or if you're renting at the end of this long residential street and people are speeding up and down the road and you have your kids riding your bike, that might be a problem. So there are land use things to consider. And it may not be appropriately in a zoning ordinance either. Like, some of those aren't zoning questions. Those are,
seeing a nice neighbor.
yeah, but those are like public safety questions too. Some of them are zoning questions, and that's what we need to parse out a little bit more. Anyway, I think I've stewed on this a lot since the question was first asked of us, and I think the best option, aside from just recognizing, except for not doing anything, is to try to figure out, you have to quantify what it is you're dealing with before you can figure out how to deal with it. We just don't know. Air DNA and those sites, people can argue that those are perfectly good data sets, but they're not. They do not capture all the data that you need to really try to figure it out. So without passing judgment on the good or the bad of short-term rentals, like, this is your best approach. I'm not saying this draft is not perfect.
It's a really good start,
So it's
But
just
it
something
doesn't-
for us to talk about. That's all.
but what it doesn't
Right.
capture, so I do rentals, you do rentals. I love it when I've worked with with a tenant, a potential tenant. And I bent over backwards trying to find them something, and I get a phone call saying, oh, thank you so much for your help. But my friend Susie is gonna let us stay at her house for the summer. Well, you know darn well, Susie's getting paid under the table.
Yeah.
So Susie's not declaring the income.
Mhm.
Susie's not paying the state of Maine the sales tax of 9%. And yet everybody's making money. I don't see how you're gonna capture those people. And you have no idea. There are so many of those in this village,
Yeah.
never
sure.
mind
For
wherever.
the
else.
individual homes,
Yeah,
with us, we're an LLC, we're registered with the state. We have to pay our quarterlies, all that stuff, so.
those people are not
No,
paying
God,
up.
no.
So I don't know how you
For-
catch them.
I don't either.
Catch them is not really the right word, but I don't know how you get them to become a part of this.
Yeah, how do you force someone to
They
fill out
don't,
the application to, well,
Right,
apply for a license? They're not gonna want it.
no,
I'm
and
not-
it's happening all the
But
time.
but this is like Noel said, it's really the only way you'll be able to determine who's got one and who, who rents and who doesn't.
But they'll even go deeper underground.
I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater for that example. though.
No, but I'm telling you, I want you to know that it's there.
Yes, that's fine. Then you have an avenue to try to get even more in depth if you really want to. I mean, again, on the very basic level, all you're doing is just responding to a concern that half of the community has, that short-term rentals are going to be an issue. Here's a way to
Mhm.
just like get your head around it a little bit without totally freaking out on one side or the other. That's my goal here, is that I feel like it's a really polarizing issue. And that the way we need to come about it in order to kind of get to the middle ground is to say, this is not a judgment ordinance. This is we're
Like
just
safety.
trying to track it, and then we're putting some life safety elements in there. And, incidentally, we also really want to think about the fact that, by doing this, we are adding another administrative burden to someone in the town office, so we have to offset that cost somehow. And I don't know if
Do
that's a sales pitch or not.
Airbnbs have to register through the state?
I have no idea how they operate, but the homeowner's making money, so the homeowner's gonna pay
I
taxes.
know, but I'm thinking, if you do this, send it out to people. And they don't register, but yet they go through, you
Airbnb.
can find them through like an Airbnb.
Hmm.
Or if they have to register through the state of Maine, like VRBO or BBRO, whatever it is, and, those types, can you download those to the properties that are just in the town of Mount Desert and say, well, we know you're renting because you're advertising, you need to file this,
You could.
But that's a whole administrative,
Well, that's what I'm saying, though, that's a lot of work, but that is one way of going to figure out who is actually qualifies for this,
Mhm.
Yeah, it's, I mean, on full transparency, my wife and I own weekly rental in Tremont. So we sold apartment buildings and bought waterfront
Right.
property. And the only reason we own waterfront property is because we were able to sell something and get something in return and and need that income to
I
pay
mean-
for it. So I have a full appreciation of both sides of the story, 100%.
Mhm.
I don't think you can argue that. The other argument is, if it is just an affordability crisis, if you eliminated all opportunity to do seasonal vacation rentals, there would in fact be more houses on the market that people could potentially buy for year-round housing. That's a. you
Yeah, but
can't
I think
argue
you
about
would,
that.
you
But
could
that's a
log
silly-
it,
that's a
But you'd
silly
also-
example.
I mean,
because you're dictating what people can do.
right, but the number of summer homes that I offer, your properties probably aren't winterized, all of them either.
Just one of them is.
So, those homes would hit the market too, and
Affordability in year-round housing is a huge issue that this is only one, like I said, if I were to take the pie chart, this is a small sliver of the pie chart. There's way more. It's way more nuanced than that.
I mean, I like the fact that if we look at this as a life safety issue, because, I mean, I remember having conversations with homeowners years ago saying, you need to put up smoke detectors, and I was told they were unsightly. So that they wouldn't be putting, street numbers, oh no, those are not pretty,
Yeah,
and smoke detectors. So,
yeah,
I look at it as a life safety issue.
sure. Yeah, like my second unit needs a lot of work. I'm not sure I beat that code. But We have smoke detectors.
That's so good.
We haven't rented it yet, though.
Carbon monoxide?
It's been rich.
gas. It's just, it would be sad that, this just gets turned down because people don't wanna do it, but I see your side, what if someone dies, and because of no smokes or just no walkthrough, but. I mean, I shouldn't, I know Barbara makes them like put in egress windows. In like bedrooms if they're not there now, and I know a staircase has been ripped out to bring for headroom. I mean, I don't know how elaborate you wanna be with that, but, cause you got people staying that aren't familiar with your house.
Correct.
So. It depends on how drastic you want people to improve their buildings.
Yeah, I think what I try to do,
I haven't read this,
my
so
goal was to take a
I
light
haven't had
touch,
time,
but there's definitely some things in here that need to get modified. And so I started coming at, the first thing I really wanted to do is, we just have to come to some agreement on what a definition of short-term rental is. And so this definition is fairly consistent with what I was able to find for other places. So there's a few fundamental things to just sort of walk through. But I guess I would also. At the end of the day, like, this is a policy question for the town, and. We could either drop it right now and talk to the board and say. We followed up with it and everybody on the committee decided to drop it, or. We could kick it down the road and say we polish this up as much as we could, and this is a policy conversation that's a larger. Than the LUZO group. We were asked to do something. This is what we're providing. It's a big topic. How does the town want to handle it? Like, it's really, I have no stake in this particular.
I had missed the meeting you guys had when this was brought up by a specific Board of Selectmen member. It'd be nice to have her look at this and actually join us.
Well, yeah, and I would, well, I
And
was,
she was pushing it
yep,
and was kind of upset at the fact last year we didn't have something on the warrant for this. I mean, I just don't think it's something like you can do half-ass and just, it's gotta be,
I think the narrative needs to be discussed well too, otherwise it's just gonna be dead in the water, and we're not. That's what I
Well-
said, this isn't no judgment ordinance, this is basically, we're
Right.
just trying to get the goal, the objective should be. To get to Rick's point, which is what are we actually trying to fix here?
Right, what are we trying to regulate?
And we
It'd
can't,
be interesting if
understand it.
if this issue came up at any of these meetings.
I've been to a few other meetings and it comes up at every meeting.
Short-term rentals?
Yep. I'll be surprised, and I'm not gonna bring it up, because I want to hear from other people, but
Right.
it's not like we're.
Setting the agenda.
Yeah, you can't see the conversation, it's more, let's see what happens.
what has come up during the meetings that you've attended? What's the biggest
Yeah,
complaint?
it's,
Is it the overturn of people coming and going, or
I
what
want
is the,
I haven't had the opportunity to ask, like, so what is it about short-term rentals that you're concerned with?
Right.
Which I do think would be the follow-up question at these meetings, like if somebody brings it up, like,
Mhm.
so let's talk about it to really understand. That, because in some communities, some villages, it might be like the change. I used to have a whole bunch of families living around me, now I have a bunch of
people you don't
people that I
know?
don't know here, or I have a bunch of people I don't know half the year, and then finally I get to have my old neighbor back or whatever. And that's not begrudging the people from
No,
doing it,
yeah,
it's just like
no.
understanding.
Yeah, well, that's what you're trying to understand. What
Yeah.
is it? What's going on?
Yeah, so I think that's a great follow-up question. A lot of it was, I think it's a reactive. Thing, short-term rentals, and it all ties back to. How, we don't have any year-round residents anymore,
So it's housing versus,
but we'll see, I'd like to. Like, draw that out a little bit more without me trying to put a judgment on it.
yeah. No, I was just because you had mentioned you had been to
Yep.
some
Comes up
meetings
all the
and
time.
it comes up.
Yep, we need a short-term.
I mean,
rental, blah, blah.
I haven't heard nothing, and I've been here, 19 years?
Yeah,
I mean, I haven't had any complaints about rentals
Yeah,
at all.
that's good from a code perspective.
That's what I'm saying though, you know, and then me, if anybody, you would think like a neighbor being loud or
Yeah,
the
that's
constant turnover, the traffic, you would think that would be coming to me.
right.
Everything else does,
Yeah.
Wildwood Stables, reservations, hotel,
Yeah,
this is a town of Mount Desert. But I mean, but I haven't had any complaints, that's, you know, that's why it's like, you know, and you see what's going on in our next community, our next towns.
yes.
And I
You know, it's like government just wants, and I'm sorry, I work for the government, but they want their hands on everything.
I can
Yeah.
tell you from my office right now, there are fewer summer rentals available for next year. And I have written more leases earlier because people are panicked that they're not gonna be able to get anything for next year.
So will people
Based
rent
on,
like a house for a whole month kind of thing?
but based on what?
More
What's-
people are staying here longer that own.
Okay,
So you and I
Yeah.
are siblings, and prior to the pandemic, you came for July, I came for August,
Yeah.
or whatever. And
Mhm.
now we're both here for the whole summer, because the pandemic has allowed us to still work from home, or we've retired. And so,
well, see, I think that right there too.
so more
Done a lot of-
homeowners,
Yeah,
more summer families generationally are using their houses for longer lengths of
yeah,
time,
yeah,
and there's less houses in the rental pool.
Interesting.
yeah, see, the pandemic, you know, that made a difference.
So that's what I don't know if you're seeing longer lengths of leases.
Everyone that rents from us wants to expand the time that they're here.
Mhm.
We're about 95% full for next season
Mhm.
already.
And most of it's
So-
repeats, right?
Well, yeah, the reason we are like that is because we offer them. When they come to us brand new and they treat the property decently and everything
Mhm.
else. We tell them that now that you're renting with us, this is your week,
Right.
you know, and if you want to come back next year, we'll send you out a lease and. And this will be your week until you decide you don't want to rent from us anymore.
Right.
They go, wow, that's pretty neat.
Mhm.
So, and they actually like that. And then 2 years in, they say, is there any way we can get another week?
Right.
What about those people that come after us? Have they gotten sick or died or anything?
Right.
Yeah. Geez, they're clamoring for,
Oh,
to expand to 2 weeks. We have one couple that comes for 6 weeks. They want 8.
Mhm.
Like, holy smokes. And that's at our most expensive cottage.
Yeah,
That's
Like,
nice.
wow.
Good
Cha-ching.
problem.
right. But it's probably
So-
cheaper for them to stay here for 8 weeks than it is for them to buy a house.
Oh, absolutely.
Truly
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. But I wonder, I just wrote down, because it's a really interesting question, like, there's a difference in the impact from a land use perspective or from a town code perspective, I guess, or an impact perspective of people that are, the transition for every 7 days or every 5 days or whatever. Then there might be if you're there for 30 days or 8
Right.
weeks.
I mean, right now I have homeowners that won't even entertain a 1-week lease. Because they're waiting for a month.
Yep.
Come January, if they don't have those months, they'll look at lesser
Right.
time,
But
but
that's,
they're hoping they don't have to.
and that's for the people that want to be here for that long, right? But I guess what I'm saying is, if you're thinking about it the way that we're thinking about it in this committee, it's a land use, what's the implication of this particular use from a land use perspective? And the turnover creates a different environment in your neighborhood than if you have a lot of people there that are longer.
Oh, no
Yeah,
question.
So I'm trying to, I think it's an interesting question, because I do think it would be worthwhile. Why are you only, like, this ordinance deals with 30 days or less?
And that was one of my other questions. So if I own a house and I rent to you for 3 weeks,
Yep,
that's 21 days.
yep.
Then I rent to Kim for 21 days. Am I,
Yes, you're a short-term rental,
because nobody was more than 30 days,
correct?
even though it's more than 30 days total.
Yes. You could argue, make that argument by saying, well, I rent to 4 different people 1 week each
Right.
for a whole month.
Mhm.
Am I a short-term rental?
And there is a contradiction in here with the definition of short-term rental is any time less than 30 days. And then further down in the ordinance, it says it has to be at least 7 days.
Yep. That might be,
So in the off season, we do, you know,
40
3-night minimum.
Right,
Because some people like to come to just stay over New Year's or just stay over Christmas or
Jazzy
stay over
weekend.
Thanksgiving and then they're gone. They don't wanna
Right.
spend the whole week, so.
and again, from a policy perspective in the town, that might not be a problem at all.
Right, I just wanted to point that out, that
Yep.
it seemed to be an inherent contradiction.
So I don't know if we're gonna resolve like a lot of stuff tonight, but I think it's taking a look at,
It's a great start.
this is a draft. Here's the fundamental things that I think are worth like spending a little time to set up. It's a policy decision. There's somebody that has to be responsible for administering it. In some places, it's the town clerk. In some places, it's the code enforcement office. We need to decide who, if we're gonna come up with a draft, how is this gonna get administered? So it could be the administrative function is through the clerk's office and the inspection arm is through the code office, which makes good sense. Or, you know, like there's different ways to handle it. We just need to,
Doesn't
need
the
to-
fire department get involved in Bar Harbor?
they probably do, yeah. But I'm also keeping this very like, I mean, we could go into the standards too, like, look at the standards. Do they make sense? Which ones do we need to take out? Like I was at, Jerry actually had a question on the sanitary waste disposal, so I kept that in there as a question. Fundamentally, if you have a house and you're on a septic system, the septic system is designed for the number of bedrooms, and that's how many bedrooms you're supposed to be renting out. That's how it should work. So do you really need to like, you know, I don't know if you really need to go and inspect that.
Well, I mean, you know, I mean, ideally, yeah, it's for a 4-bedroom house, but the turnover, the usage,
Right.
you know, I would think that, I think that would come into play,
Yep,
you know. Because I have mine designed for my house for 3 bedrooms, I live there, and it's, you know, 3 of us and Lucas leaves, or on occasion I'll have family, but. With a rental, it's constant turnover, you know, and
Yep.
it's usage and it's people and, I
right,
mean, I would think at some point that would fail a system,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, I'd be interested, I didn't get a chance to look through the plumbing code to see if there was like a different category for, you know, almost like.
I mean, it'd be like use
Yeah.
and design,
Yep.
kind of both. I mean, that's what I look at when somebody has a septic and they, you know, either want to add some building to their property, you know, it has plumbing in it, well, as your septic, and they're on septic, are you, you know, is this designed to allow for this additional, you know, use
Yeah,
on the system,
right,
you know?
so I gotta look into that a little bit. I think it's worth, again, the conversation of who's supposed to be administering this and what parts of it. There's the whole, you know, I think, the intent really isn't to try to have you go back like every 5 years and do some sort of inspection. So, because then what's gonna happen is like, you're gonna have a huge administrative burden in 2023. And then 5 years from that, 2028, you're gonna be like, holy crap, I gotta do all these again.
Yeah,
So
like,
maybe some.
at some
issue
point,
we
the
have to
onus
do.
should be on the owners,
Yeah.
you
so-
know, to make sure that they're
Yep,
following through with providing safety.
Yeah.
So then what-
By signing this license, you agree that you have met the standards.
You know, and not require, you know, inspection unless I get a call. you know,
Maintained
something
upkeep
like
and all
that.
that kind of stuff.
Right.
so I put some of these in here, I put for discussion purposes, some of them and other examples, like they're, you know, again, so in other communities. This license is the way that you can get to limiting the number of licenses that you issue. So that's not included here. I do think if you have this framework, it's important to note that at least you have this framework, so if all of a sudden you're like, holy smokes, I didn't realize we had like 2,000 weekly rentals, and that's a huge problem, you know, 5 years from now or whatever, like the framework could be there for you to add a provision to only grant so many licenses. I think that would be an atom bomb problem for this discussion if we even went. to
And
that
isn't that what
I
Bar
think
Harbor looked at, and they
Yeah.
had huge problems,
level.
Well, they're on a waiting, people on a waiting list.
right?
You know, but
And
I
that
mean,
slowed
that,
down their
I
real
can
estate
see it
market.
maybe that. You know, is maybe like new ones that come on after, maybe,
Right.
maybe.
But
I
that
mean,
had
that's-
an impact on real estate sales.
But I'm just saying that
And it's also
if you
pushing.
look at something like that.
Yeah, I
you
think
know,
I think a lot of these issues are island-wide issues and really deserve an island-wide, actually, we're organizing through my office an island-wide housing summit. Because this is a response to what Bar Harbor did, and it's pushing the demand to other communities who
Yes.
aren't prepared for it.
And
That's why
buyers
we're
are finding that there's less expensive properties in Tremont and the
Yeah.
Southwest Harbor, so they can buy two for the price of one.
Correct. Now, they're gonna have issues, and those issues are a direct result of
Bar Harbor's
what's happening in Bar Harbor. That I can't deny it. So, that's not why we're here, but I will say, like, put my planner hat on, like, this issue of housing and these uses related to housing aren't isolated to just this community. It's like, what happens here, it's an island-wide issue, you can't deny it. There's no denying it. So it's kind of interesting and challenging. But I do know that nobody who you want to live in Mount Desert can afford to live in Mount Desert. I mean, that's a broad statement, but you know what I mean.
So
It's,
do you want a feel-good story?
I would love a feel-good story.
So the house that came on the market on Sunday,
Yep,
that went under contract on Monday,
yep.
we received multiple offers
Mhm,
in a small commercially zoned residential neighborhood.
yep,
The seller got all the offers, and some of them were over the asking price.
mhm.
And according to the rumor mill, and I believe it's quite true, the seller left lots of money on the table and took the offer from the year-round family
Great,
because he thought it was the right thing to do.
it's awesome.
So there are people out there still with.
Yeah,
all comers.
I guess, I mean, but I would use a great example. I mean, when I was working for.
How would you feel with something?
I love it, thank you. It doesn't warm my heart. But it doesn't, I don't begrudge the person who's like, I went to high school with somebody's mom who wanted to sell her house. And she wanted to sell it to
Mhm.
somebody who could afford it. But she has, in order for her to
Yes,
like do her
her
thing.
next thing.
Her next thing, you have to sell it for whatever you
Right.
can get for it, so you can't begrudge people for
No.
doing that. But I think that's a fundamental challenge of Northeast Harbor in particular.
Mhm. Oh, not a question.
Yeah, and how do you reverse that trend? Or do you want to reverse that trend? That's why I'm saying Northeast Harbor is like a little bit schizo, like, I think there's an identity crisis happening here, like, what do you want to be? Do you want to be the 900 year-round residents like you used to be, or do you just want to throw up the white flag and say, yep, this is what we're gonna be? Because if there's choices you have to make in order for one to happen versus the other.
Mhm.
If you don't make any choices, then it's going to be one, but if you have to make choices, and those choices are gonna be painful for some people.
So do you think we
No.
can get Martha to come and help us figure out what's her,
What the problem is?
what's her concern?
Well, here,
Or how do we make her
When
feel
you
better?
were there, but I missed that, what was it about? What was her focus, what was this? She had to have mentioned it, right?
no, I think it's the same, what we've been talking about, in my observation, and Derwin, and you guys may have a different perspective on it, but we know this is an issue in Bar Harbor, our perception is that this is a problem here, we should do something about it, so what are we gonna do? And so what I'm saying is, well, perception needs to be quantified in order for us to
Yeah.
figure out if you're even supposed to do anything about it. There are a couple ways to do it, but the most effective way is something like this.
I was just wondering.
If you could look at the sales in the town of Mount Desert for the last year and see if they'd gone to individuals or to, I mean, LLCs are like people, but they're not, but you know what I mean? To
Yeah.
see what those sales are and how those homes are currently being used, would that be helpful?
I mean.
I would think it would
Kind of
be.
interesting, I'm not sure it would still be, like, again, there's so many like layers from that data. Like, what
Or-
conclusions do you draw from that data?
It seems though one of the problems would be if you're just hitting LLCs that I was going through with Kyle. A lot of, I often go and ask him who lives in such and such a house. And it's an LLC, but it's not a rental. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
the summer people are just putting their
Right.
homes in LLCs
And I guess-
regardless if they.
I own
live or
3
not.
properties and only one of them is under my name.
Yeah.
Actually, I own
I don't think. you
I own
get
5
what you're
properties and
looking
only one of
for.
them is under my name.
Because you're crazy to put
100%.
But the other question is, would it be nice to know of the properties that have sold in the town of Mount Desert? Why they sold, did you retire and move closer to your grandchildren? Did mother die and you never wanted to come here anyway, so you're selling the house? Did you sell it because you couldn't afford it? Was it,
Yeah, that would be good.
I mean, I don't know how you figure all of that out, but.
And the old people selling it are gonna say, it's none of your goddamn business.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah, I think that would be really interesting. I'm not sure if it will help draw the same
Right.
conclusions, but yes, I would love that data. I think that would be even helpful for the comp plan,
Hmm,
because it will help in larger discussions. Again, we're bringing it back up to the whole, like, what's happening in our community with regard to housing and year-round.
Another problem, when you talk about the 900 people, that's not gonna happen for a couple of reasons. One is all those homes that have switched over to seasonal are gonna stay seasonal, I think,
but their
And
season is longer, Derlin.
Their season is longer, but you've also lost, I did a survey, and we've lost, this was maybe up to 5 years ago. I went through, just walked around, remembering whether the house was year round or seasonal. And we'd lost something like that. This was, say, at least 5 years ago, we'd lost 75 properties that had switched over
And the first,
from year round to summer. So in order to recreate housing, at least of the housing like we knew, unless a lot of these people decide year round, you're gonna have to increase their density. So, and we see even little attempts to increase the density in some of these neighborhoods,
right.
cause Armageddon.
Yeah,
but the first
That's
season
the
of the
main point.
pandemic, I know Willie did a walk around town at Christmas time and came back and said, I don't know, if it's like 30 houses that had lights on.
Yeah.
Never have lights on at Christmas
And
time.
your kids
So
at
people
school.
are, they may be seasonal homes, but again, their season is expanding. I mean,
Yeah.
look how many people are still on the street and it's after
No, I
Labor Day.
agree, but I think when people say, when they use the year-round season, they're talking about people that like used to live here, plumbers, laborers, carpenters and stuff. So now you're getting college professors and whatever. So it's a different classifier. So I think people are emotionally attached to trying to bring back the mixed use residents, like what we used to have. So that's not happening easily, I don't think.
I'll be curious how the next few kindergarten classes are, how many kids are enrolled in the next, say 5 years.
yeah.
You know, you're gonna see a bump in 4 years, because those are all gonna be pandemic babies.
That's true, yeah,
And where are they where are they
Yep.
living? Where are those
Right.
kids?
What else did you have to do?
kids.
Well, don't get COVID kids. That's gonna be the new Gen X.
yeah.
But-
Not me.
I mean, but I think that's really interesting. Where are they coming from in the town? What are the trends in that way? And Durham's, I mean, it's an interesting point. This is why I love the data that I get from Katrina.
Well, when my kids were at school, there's hardly, and I think I've said this before, there were hardly any walkers, but the school buses were full. So they're all, living outside of Northeast, except I could count, like the Mitchells and their 3 kids, there's a few kids that were walkers, but the buses were just packed.
Yeah. And what does that say about the policies that the town needs to
Yeah.
have as it relates?
Yeah.
That's that's the comp plan.
Mhm.
I need to run.
It's
Okay.
good to see you twice in 1 week.
And I'll be here tomorrow, 4 o'clock, for another meeting.
What's tomorrow at 4?
The review of the beginning discussions of third-party requests.
Oh, nice.
Oh, my God, already?
Already,
No, this is a group being pulled together to prepare and write a policy,
Okay,
because there is no policy right now.
right.
So it makes the entire process arbitrary and indefensible, in my opinion. So
Mhm.
we decided to put together a work group. And see if we can recommend a policy to the select board,
Cool.
see what happens before it comes time to start sending out letters to third-party groups. So,
Great.
anyway,
So yeah,
Good to see you.
see you all later. Thank you.
Thank you.
what we got left to do.
That was
see
it.
Robert?
What's that? Nope.
Yeah, I got
I
a
think we're
couple,
done.
remember zoning requests?
Oh, yeah.
Zoning
zoning
district,
district, sorry.
Yeah.
two properties.
There's yeah, there's a couple properties in Seal Harbor that, I dealt with one last year. His lot's non-conforming. And the property is within the shoreland residential 2 zoning district, but yet he's not within 250 feet of the water. So it's a couple properties in Seal Harbor. Here's the cove, the bridge is right here.
Is that Bracy Cove?
No, it's, no, it's before Dodge. Wait, well, I don't know, it's not Bracy Cove.
Who is that where the Harbor Club is?
No, it's before the Harbor Club. It's when you come over here, you do the corner, and then just before you come over the bridge, there's that big, you know, like, there's a
Bird?
house on the point. And then there's the big, berm of dirt.
Is that the
past
bird?
rails, come down rails past the Christian Van Heerden's.
Mhm.
It's that cove area there.
Oh, okay,
And Rockefeller's house is up,
okay.
just up past it. It's these two blocks right here. One is under Everett Pierce Homestead LLC, and the other one is Adrian Maxwell.
Hmm.
So these are two properties that, see the
They're on the
250,
non-water side.
yeah,
Oh, for God's
yeah,
sake.
the 250-foot buffer goes like this. And then it goes down here, and then it comes up over here and goes here. These people aren't in it, and so they are asking for a zoning change.
That should be easy.
Okay,
Across the road.
Yeah, they're not even on the water side.
so we should put the 250 on there and say everything on this side of the road is gonna be.
Well, it's just really these
residential.
two, like John March is back here. He's in a conservation zoning district. I didn't approach him.
What about that other guy? Right
Who,
there, the other
this?
person, nope, up from there.
Here?
Yeah.
Yeah, see their lot goes here, so the 250s right here. So they gotta stay in the shoreline zone.
But Maxwell and,
Maxwell and this.
it's Scribner, it's Jay Scribner's house.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
Scribner's, yep, yep.
Gotcha.
They wanna change to, and I tried looking at the zoning, we'll have to decide the zoning, which is down here further. Because it can't be conservation, and then the other zone is. Like this way, a little ways, but I don't know if it's R1, I think it is, or something like that, I don't know.
What's the SR2? Is that an SR2?
Yeah, SR2. And then conservation all up behind it, because it used to all be Rockefellers.
Somewhere.
Is there an R2?
Oops, sorry.
No,
There's no R2.
I think it's R1,
That's the only one there
I-
is.
either R1 or R2, I can't remember. But,
But
Yeah.
that should kind of be a no-brainer. I mean, they're,
well, I know, but I told them to put it in writing
the
and
map
address it
number?
to us, there's 2 of them, there's. Map 3 lot 27 and map 3 lot 26, and I've got letters from both of them asking for the zoning change.
Seems to make sense.
Okay,
Because I usually know shoreline is more stringent, I mean strict than inland zoning, but they're not even on the water side and not even within 250. So those are 2 that I know of that come up to me,
Okay.
so. Other than that, that's what I have.
Easy.
It's rare.
I gotta call, I think we need to have a conversation with Andy and with John about like if there's anything we need to do for this housing rules.
Accessory,
Yeah,
that the state, did we have to adopt it by July 2023,
exactly.
or incorporate it into our ordinance to be somewhat.
We should be looking at it right now.
so isn't that a priority over this rental thing?
Oh, we're gonna be, this is in the works already now. We're also kind of seeing how potential amendments work their way through the process, so.
I'm not sure what the status is on that, though. I know people are coming out and
I like to
writing.
just talk to them.
Uh-huh,
I like to just
yeah,
set something up, so if you see an email from me, that's what I'm doing. This is,
yeah, because we have some in the ordinance now, but
Yeah.
it's not
right,
like what they
that's what I'm worried about,
written out.
yeah.
I
was
mean, they're allowing a lot of density on a small lot of what Janet Mills signed.
hoping- Love it, you know how that goes over.
Yes, I do. Mhm.
All right, Anything else?
At some point, you and I need to sit down and go over stuff,
Yep,
you know, that we talk about, like land use stuff that
we need to fix,
need to be tweaked. and-
Yep.
Yeah,
set it up. We'll get that in the queue. Now, those out, I think some of them are not that.
yeah, they're not major, some with clarification. and-
Okay, so community meetings,
I won't be at the October 13th one
okay.
in Otter Creek, because I got the McQuinn Quarry
Oh.
appeal
so
that night
That's
here.
that'd be
So,
awesome. Gonna miss a good one.
well, believe me,
You'd rather
I
be in Otter
tried,
Creek?
but it's just, it didn't work.
Oh, yeah, we were supposed to have it on a different, you were supposed to have yours on a different night, right?
Supposed to.
Yeah.
Didn't work out that way.
Yep. Okay,
Thanks, Noel, appreciate it.
I don't know that I'll be here November 1st.
awesome.
Going to Cleveland for Halloween.
Wow,
You what?
Cleveland rocks, I heard.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
What's in Cleveland?
One of my really
Oh,
good
good.
friends lives in Cleveland and
Stop
her
recording
neighborhood,
Yeah, we're good.
and adjourn.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Bye, Stephanie, thank you.
her neighborhood sounds like it's like Ledgelawn.
Oh, yeah, cool.